Hi everybody. This is the 14th edition of the Tiny Lab Talks. Today we're going to talk about Are We What We Eat? The Tiny Lab Talks are a brief informal talks between researchers invited by University of Aveiro and researchers from the University of Aveiro itself through the American Corner program on topics such as technologies, innovation, research and culture. The conversations will usually take place at the UA's American Corner MediaLab, where we are, with the support of the US Embassy in Portugal. So now I'm going to present our guests today. We have here at my left Diego Bohórquez, is like that, Bohórquez?
Yes.
Which is an associate professor in medicine and pathology and an associate research professor in neurobiology at the Institute for Brain Sciences of Duke's University. And he is a gut brain scientist. Professor Odete Cruz Silva, at Diego's left, is head of our medical science department at the University of Aveiro. She's a PI of the Institute of Biomedicine, also there at the DCM. And she's for long a neuroscientist working in Alzheimer's disease from the basic to the clinical studies. And now it's time to present myself. I don't think I need a cheat sheet for that. So my name is Sandra Vieira. I'm also professor at the Department of Medical Sciences. I'm also a PI at the Institute of Biomedicine. And actually, Odete was my supervisor of my PhD. So I started with neurodegeneration, but then I passed, and my research focus now is on neuroregeneration. Also working from basic to clinical studies. But it's time for what you are here waiting for, some questions to our guests. And my first question is a soft one, okay? So, just to start getting the environment warmer. So, first question to both of you, can you tell us a little bit about your career paths and key moments of your career decisions, and if there are key moments, those decisions were made by your brain or by your gut feelings? And
I'll probably never
Sure.
start.
You start with a tough question. I'm not sure if my major decisions in life were induced by my gut or by my brain, because I have this philosophy that the most important things that have happened in my life have happened very quickly and without warning. And if I look at my life, not my career, if I look at my life, it's been shaped by this kind of decision that I did not plan for and that I had no control to change. So these are the things that really mark your life. So for those that like to meticulously plan everything, go with the flow. It's not good. In terms of career, I'll try and be very, very brief. Again, I think there may be students listening to us, and students worry so much nowadays. What they do is a master's thesis, what they do is a PhD, this is the wrong project for me. Really, don't worry about it. Because I started in biological sciences. I started then by studying a protein that you can say regulates, is the biological switch, for those that are in science, phosphatases. And by studying that protein, my first projects were on cancer. Then I worked in autoimmune diseases. Subsequently, I worked on male infertility, and then I worked on neuroscience, and finally on Alzheimer's disease. Always looking at those proteins. But there I made a conscious decision what disease I was going to study next. But pretty much, if you're in this area of molecular, cellular, which is my basis, you're very flexible. You can study one disease today, another disease tomorrow. So what was telling for me, when I decided to go into neuroscience, that was a conscious decision, but I could have gone into neuroscience with any molecular or cellular basis. So I did my undergraduate degree in England. I did my PhD in Scotland. I then went to the Rockefeller University, and one day I returned to Portugal. I have a son that was born in Scotland. I have a son that was born in the US, and when I came back, my mom wanted the third one born in Portugal. I said, no. So if you want more science, you can contact me. But generally speaking, my message is take it easy. Enjoy life. Enjoy what you do. And for young students, make sure you choose the project that gives you some return, some pleasure.
Very well. And you, Diego?
I grew up in Ecuador, in the Amazonia of Ecuador. My parents both work in a farm. They had their own farms. And at some point, after I finished elementary school, my father made the decision to send me to a military school. And I believe it was a wise decision, because as I was sharing over lunch, a lot of the habits that I developed over my career came out of that education. So one moment, there has been many moments throughout my life. After I finished military high school, I went to an agricultural school in Honduras that was fully boarding. And from there, I went to North Carolina State University, and I was in a laboratory that they study chickens. And it was in the Department of Poultry Science, not to be confused with poetry. Which there was one time that I got into a conversation with a lady in a bus, and she kept asking me about this poet from Argentina. Later on, I made the connection, so it can happen. And one key thing, I guess, for what I do today, I study sensory transduction of how it is that food is converted into feelings within the body. Like when we eat food, how it is that the gut recognizes that those nutrients and tells the brain what we just ate. And one transition that often people ask is, how did you go from studying chickens to studying biology for humans? And that is where it comes that phrase that I've come to cherish, is that you're constantly influenced by the food that we eat and the people that you meet. And there was a professor that after seeing one of my presentations, he asked me for one of the slides, and then he also asked me, what would you like to do after you finish your PhD? And I said, a postdoctoral fellowship. And he said, would you like to go to the gastroenterology division at Duke University? So I was already interested in the gut. And for me, hearing gastroenterology division, I thought that it was a giant step in the right direction for my own perspective. So it was a very quick yes. And then after a year, I was working in that area. And 12 years later, I'm here. So the opportunities present themselves. And I think that they favor the prepare, right? If you have those feelings. So
that's true. And maybe you can share with the audience, with our tiny audience here and the audience back home, the story that you told us today morning in your talk this morning about that lady that was.
Yeah. So that is another slice, I guess, of how it is that our careers are constantly shaped. When I had begun my graduate studies in nutrition, after a year I had the opportunity to sit next to a lady that had undergone gastric bypass surgery. And she told me that within a year she had lost about 40% of her body weight. So for somebody that weighs about 300 pounds, losing 120 pounds is massive, right? And she also said that within 1 week of the surgery, her diabetes was cured. It was solved. She didn't need more insulin shots. I knew that diabetes was a major issue, and I didn't know that you could cure it by gastric bypass surgery, and that is well documented today. But what really caught my attention was that before the surgery, she said that she could not even look at sunny side up eggs, that the yolk will make her queasy, she said. But take this, now after the surgery, not only I can eat the eggs, I actually have a craving for the yolk. Every time I get served that plate, I will take a little piece of toast and take the whole yolk. I really like it. So how is it that rewiring my gut alter my mind? And that has been an underlying current and sentiment of the research that I do. But yeah.
Okay, and that's, thank you very much. I also tell Diogo that I have a craving for eggs and yolk, so
right.
I have to blame my gut. But that's very good, because then it's my second question was actually on that, about the research on the gut-brain connection. So you gave us this morning this great, instructive, enthusiastic, entertaining talk. I love it a lot. Thank you very much. It was on sugar and how gut influences what we choose to eat. And he showed us very beautiful videos of microscopy. I'm also a microscopy fan, and Odete also, so we love it. And show us all the research behind his major finding, very fantastic, about the direct connection between the gut and the brain, and these cells that exist in the gut, the specific cells that connect, synapse with the brain. So my question, as a follow-up question of that talk and what we also talked during lunch, can you comment on how these findings of yours will impact neuropathologists, or can impact neuropathologists? And I also know that Odete has some work in the gut and neuropathologies, and so I think you can.
Yeah, so I will answer that question in two parts. The first one is what is the main finding, right? Like, so you probably know that sugar is sweet, right? But what you don't know is that besides the sweet, is that there is another signal that sugar gives the body, which is nutritive. So even if in the absence of taste, an animal, including humans, is capable of distinguishing sugar from just a sweetener. And that signal comes from the gut. So what my laboratory discovered is the cells that, using some sensors, they distinguish both the sweetener from the sugar, and then tell the brain very rapidly that was sugar. So we, or any animal, can go and say, like, can see sugar. We call these cells neuropod cells. So what does that have to do with neuropathologies? In the process, to be able to track the circuitry of how it is that the cells, just like in the tongue or in the nose, we have these senses. In that process, to be able to track the circuitry of how the cells are connected to the brain, we use some viruses. And in the process, we uncover a path for pathogens to be able to crawl from the gut up to the brain. So I had brought up that we know that there are several neurodegenerative diseases, like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, that seem to have some sort of connection with the gut. In fact, in the case of Parkinson's, years before Parkinson's signs show up in the brain, they actually are observed in the gut. And including some of the disorders, like motility disorders, show up first in the gut. But we really don't know how is it that the pathogens get up to the brain, and whether or not we could actually target the gut before these diseases spread throughout the nervous system and get to the brain when is irreversible. So that was the connection.
Yeah, it could be a spreading pathway for
for these pathogens.
Yeah, for these pathogens. Okay, very nice. Thank you. Odete, your turn.
Well, our approach was the opposite. We were looking at the brain, and it led us to the gut. You were looking at the gut, and it led you to the brain. So we have a study that's been ongoing for a few years, where we follow over 500 patients in primary healthcare centres, and we look at their cognitive capacities, and we evaluate their cognitive capacities, and then we correlate that with other pathologies, other conditions, other comorbidities. Mm-hmm. And the strongest correlation that we found, and we were absolutely amazed by this finding, was with gastrointestinal disorders. So we found that people who performed badly in the cognitive tests, 37, almost 40% of them, had some gastrointestinal disorder. And this for us was totally unexpected. We also monitored heart disease and other conditions, but really this was the most striking. And then in fact, what it means is that if you have a gastrointestinal condition, you are 2.5 times more likely to behave less well in these cognitive tests that we carried out.
It's really interesting also.
We do have some molecular follow-up that we can come back to, or I can leave it back for that.
Maybe here is you don't go that down in molecules. Of course, I would be.
Maybe I can add a comment in there.
Yes,
in
of
fact,
course.
Building on what Odete said, perhaps you have heard that even in disorders like neurodevelopmental disorders like autism spectrum disorders, there is a strong correlation with gastrointestinal abnormalities. In fact, up to anywhere from 5 or 9 in 10 patients with autism suffer from GI complications, either pain, constipation, diarrhea. And there is some evidence that the stronger the GI issues, the stronger are, the most prominent are the behavioral disorders in these patients. So there's obviously not only the connection, but also an opportunity to perhaps treat the brain from the gut.
That's true. Yeah, today at lunch I'm not being interviewed, but I'm going to intervene. Today at lunch we were talking about some friend of mine that a friend has a autistic son, and she realized that when he took antibiotics that there was improvement in his social behavior, social capabilities. So it's definitely something very interesting, this gut-brain connection. And myself, as I was telling you, we study spinal cord injuries and looking for the pathologies, and we are actually interested in gut-brain crosstalk, but we always thought about, you know, as I was telling you, all these metabolites that some bacteria secrete and influence inflammation. So your findings will be a very fresh way, give us a fresh way to look at the issue. It's very nice, and it was very good talk. I hope that you've seen. If not, Diego has many of his fantastic papers available, so look for them. And so I'm sorry. Okay, I have to check the time. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you both is, we have the audience usually of this American Tiny Lab talks are younger students also looking for what is being done in Aveiro and with our American partners. So you talk a little bit about your career path. And for sure you had to struggle a lot to be where you both are today. And what would be your primary advices, or first main advices for the younger people? And you didn't answer my question about what was like a decision that you made using your gut and not your brain.
Yeah, I will say that, and this I learned from Professor Robert McKee, who is a screenplay guru, and I had the opportunity to train with him in his seminars and learn from his work on storytelling and story structure. And one of the things that he often says in his teachings is that life is not a journey. And I remember that in his, you can look him up. Even there is a character in Adaptation, is the movie with Nicolas Cage. There is a character that is played Robert McKee there. And the reason that he says that life is not a journey, because a journey you just get on the bus, find your seat, and wait until you have to get off. But life is not like that. Life is a struggle, and it's true. It is in the struggle, it is that you find life and that you make life. Because in the morning when you wake up, what is the first thing that you feel? Wow, now I have to get out, right? And then you have to find the struggle of getting into the shower or making your coffee and getting out there, and then